Hello again. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than you normally see on this particular channel. So I'm going to be upgrading, or really not really upgrading, but replacing some parts in one of my systems that has started to have a few problems. So this system is actually pretty old. So just for sake of context, this system actually has an Intel 2600K processor in it. And if you've been following Intel processor line, I think there's like a 9700K or 9900K i7 available now. So they just kind of puts it in context. This system is about 7 generations behind as far as their various different processors they've released over time. But for my purposes, it's plenty fast. It's a 4-core, 8-thread processor. Um, for everything that I need it for, it is perfectly fine. It has about 32 gigabyte of memory in it. As you can see, it has additional network card, Ethernet card there. Has 2 GPUs inside, 850 watt power supply, and a red nest of cables, as you can see. So the problem that I had with the system is that it originally had like the stock Intel um, CPU, stock heatsink in it, and the system has started actually shutting down randomly due to excessive heat. So the first thing I thought to try, I thought I would just put kind of scrub off all of the heatsink or like Arctic Silver or the heatsink components there off of the processor, off of the heatsink, and replace it. But that didn't really help all that much. So I suspect that there's something maybe cracked or something going on with the heatsink itself that's causing to not be able to remove the heat fast enough so the system can run stably. So we'll be going through and kind of just replacing the heatsink, and then we'll just see if that helps. Let's get started. So kind of since I was kind of in a pinch for time, I didn't really go out and like browse the internet too much. I don't really know much about this heatsink or cooler. I actually just kind of found it at Best Buy. They had two different versions of this, one with LEDs and one without. I just kind of read the specs. It looked like it matched my requirements. It says it supports the socket LGA 1155, which is what this particular system needs. And it wasn't too expensive. I think it was like about 35, maybe 35, $36. It looks kind of cool. I don't really need the LED since this system actually has a closed side case, so it's not really exposed to the element. But we'll check it out and see how it goes. See if this works. And there go the specs there. Let's just browse around the case a little bit here. So you see at the top there was a very large fan that originally came with this case. That fan actually died years ago, and I just never replaced it. And then in the back here you have just the standard like exhaust fan there. Have a few grommet holes there, and I believe I think there's one fan up in the front grill there. And that kind of completes the case as far as the airflow. So we just have a little bit of cool air coming in off the front, exhausting out the back. And we used to have, like I said, there used to be exhaust at the top, but no longer have that. So the idea is, hopefully, is that once I put this new heatsink in, I'll just have the fan that it comes with on the heatsink pointing toward the back of the case. So it could just, as soon as that heat comes off, it just sucks it right back out the back. And that hopefully should dramatically lower the temperatures of the CPU, and again cause it to not shut down like I've been experiencing. Oh yeah, and by the way, these are GeForce GTX 1070s that are in this box. So clearly, obviously, they're being bottlenecked a little bit by the CPU that's in the system. So if I were to put these in a system with more CPU horsepower, I would actually get a lot more frames per second out of the system. But typically, most days, I don't really get the game all that much anymore. And this system is essentially bona fide server is really what I use it for. I use it for hosting a variety of virtual machines and things in my lab, and the GPUs don't really get much use anymore. Um, so that's this little system here. There's also this is actually a Blu-ray drive that's actually in the system that's really never gotten any use since I actually built the system. I don't think I've ever watched a Blu-ray on this system, but yeah. So you got the heatsink all unboxed, everything's out. So you see here, it has quite a nice large fan that has LEDs in here. Has a very large heatsink block on the back. And we have our manual, have a wide variety of, I guess, screws and tools and everything you need there. Like it has some type of bracket and a few other cords here. Alright, and here we go is my original Intel stock CPU heatsink that came with the processor when I originally got it. So like I said, it still works, it still spins, but it's just not doing a very good job of removing the heat, so it's causing a lot of system instability, so hence the need to replace it. And you can see here the amount of heatsink on the back of this is dramatically smaller than the new one. So hopefully it should have very cool temps with this new one here. And if I ever decide to replace the system, I probably can take this new one and move that onto the new system, since this does support a lot of the newer systems, like the AMD Ryzen processors, which I have, and another build that I have here that's running some AMD Ryzen processors, and probably sometime in I don't know when, I probably will eventually repurpose this system and maybe make it just purely a storage server of some type, and get another system for virtualization purposes that can handle a bit more RAM than the 32 gig that's in here. So taking a look at the manual, it has an outline of quite a few pieces. So this particular processor is an LGA 1155, I believe. So as you can see, it supports Intel and AMD. So it tells us what parts I need for the various different processors. So it looks like I'm going to need part B, D, E, F, H, and I for my build. So I have all my various different parts. Oh, it's nice. I didn't know it came with a little extra, it doesn't look like it's Arctic Silver, but some heatsink gel. Unfortunately, looking at these pieces, none of them are actually labeled, so I'm just going to have to try to match up the graphics with what I actually see, unfortunately. So let's try to do that. So we just spent a little bit of time trying to go through these parts. I think I have all the right parts. Unfortunately, like I said, none of these parts are actually labeled, so I have to try to match up the graphics with the actual screw that I actually need, make sure that the counts matches. But I think I have all the parts. So I'm going to go and continue with the build. Trying to follow these somewhat poor instructions in my opinion. Like there's no words, the graphics aren't that great, and the like I said, none of the parts are actually labeled. So it's a lot of guesswork here. So it looks like it wants me to take this part and put this part on there somewhere, and then take, I believe, one of these screws and put it in somewhere. So let's see how that goes. So I think this is what it wanted me to do, like put these pieces on each corner here. And in addition here, it looks like there's like 3 distinct notches here. So look like for mine, I need to be on the second notch. So that's 1 notch in, 2 notches in. So I'll go around and do that on all of the corners. So trying to follow these instructions, look like I missed a step. So I think what it actually wants me to do is wants me to put this flat screw in first, right? Then once I have that flat screw in, I slide this on top. Right, get it back flat there. Slide this on top, and I slide it up to, in my case, the second notch. Right, so I think that's what the instructions intend for me to do. All right, so I'm gonna go around and do that on each edge. All right, so this is what I guess the complete result is supposed to look like. So I got that done. So now the next step is to actually mount this to the motherboard on the back side of the motherboard. So have the processor here, and like we have these little holes where we want to line that up and get that on there. So here we are, we're looking at the back side of this motherboard. So it looks like with this particular heatsink that I'm going to be putting on, since this actually has quite a bit more heft than the one that was previously on there, I'm probably going to have to put some threads or look like there's some inserts that was included with this particular mount to mount it tightly on the back here using these threads underneath the processor. So I'm just going to take this here and try to line everything up, get it in the holes. Okay, like I got 2 of them there. Having a little trouble with this one at the top. It's not quite making it. Yeah. Alright, so that's what the completed backside once it all snapped into place. So now we need to go around to the front and probably lay this tower down flat, because I think the next part we're going to have to screw some screws and bolts in and finally put on the heatsink. So now we have this back plate on, so now I need to thread these screws or these bolts or whatever you call them onto each screw here. And get that on there nice and tight, and we'll just go through and do that on each edge. Alright, so now we got those threaded on. So now the instructions is showing now I need this other part, this J part, that it previously didn't really mention, right? So it kind of jumps around a little bit. So now it's saying I need this J part, and it looks like it wants me to, let's see, take a look here. Like it wants me to thread the J on top of the top corner bolt that I just put in. So my board isn't really oriented like the picture, so I don't know if it matters which one I put it on, but I'm gonna try the back right, which is what it looks like. So let's go with that. So we'll go with this one here and screw that down nice and tight. So next up is showing putting some thermal paste on the processor, and I already have a little bit of Arctic Silver on my processor, so I'll just go with what's already there. It's kind of smeared around quite a bit. It's probably more than needs to be on there, but I'll leave it as is as for this first go around. So we're now back over to the other side, and now like we're working on I guess assembling of the heatsink, or assembling the brackets to the heatsink. So looking at the picture here, it looks like this fan is snaps off. So let's see. Okay, yep, snaps right off very easily. All right, and then now it looks like we need to thread the brackets on somehow. So let's go and try to do that. So it has a warning label. It wants me to peel that off. All right, nice and easy. And like I need these 2 pieces, and I look like I need an H screw. So I don't remember what the H looked like, so let me go and look back what the H screw is and grab that. Alright, so looking at the picture, I think these little guys here are my H's. So let's go with these. Again, it's one of the cases that I'm not 100% positive what I think it's showing, but I think it's showing me that I need to put this right here, right? And then I need to take one of these H screws and screw it down in there. So let's do that now. So I've lined up the bracket here, got my screw in, and now I just need to tighten. Alright, look like it's starting to lock up there. Alright, so now I just need to repeat that on the other side. Alright, so I think this is what the completed process is supposed to look like. So what I realized, I actually initially screwed this side in the wrong way. So the screws were pointing up instead of, well, they were pointing down instead of up. So I actually have gone and fixed that. So screws are pointing up at the end. So now I think we're getting near the home stretch here. So looking at the graphics here, so we got that part done. And now it's showing, I think it's showing that I need to screw the brackets in the order shown above. So in that 1, 2, 3, 4 zigzag that is showing as far as tightening it. But one weird thing that is showing you tighten all 4, but back in this step, it showed tightening this J piece on top. So those two together don't make any sense, because there will be no way for that part to tighten on top of this. So yeah, something's not quite adding up for me when I'm just looking at this, but let's go give it a shot and let's see what we end up with. So yeah, right off the bat, like I mentioned, when I'm looking at this, right, there'll be no way for this 4th bolt to go down with this J piece on top. So I'm thinking the instructions are wrong. Maybe that piece is for, I don't know, for like an AMD build or for something else. So I'm going to take that piece off and continue on. Let's take this J piece off so it exposes our bolt. And now I can take my heatsink and line it up with all of the screws and screw those down. So let's do that. Alright, so now I have it mounted. I've tightened the screws up in a zigzag pattern, and as I mentioned, I had to take this off. I think the instructions are wrong, or I'm just not understanding something that is telling me. But with this part sitting on there the way that it shows in the picture, there's no way that I will be able to mount this here. So I took it off. It seemed like it's sitting nice and secure and tight on there. And like the final steps that I need to do is hook the fan back up to the side of the heatsink and plug it into the motherboard and fire it up, and let's see if we're getting rid of a good amount of heat. And as you can see, this sits quite tall. In the case, it's sitting taller than my GeForce GTX graphics card that's sitting there. So if you have a smaller case or a more slim profile case, you probably won't be able to use a heatsink like this. So with this particular cooler, it has LEDs, so I guess these extra pieces are probably to control the LED. So one cord actually goes and connects directly into the motherboard, and then it has this breakaway box, this O, P, and Q piece. So here's my O, there's like a little connector here in between, and then this piece, and then we have this piece. So connect all these up, and then I guess from this cord it'll get power for the LED lights for the case. So I guess you don't necessarily even have to plug these up if you don't want the LED. In my case, like I said, my case is a closed case, so you won't probably really see the LED that much once I close the case up. Outside of maybe through the top, it'll probably shine through the top of the case, since that is open where there's supposed to be a fan that I don't have in the case currently. Just another thing I mentioned is that is this fan CPU and things. It has a kind of a high clearance, so if you have some special memory, like some memory that's kind of taller than the normal, like some that may have LEDs or something extra on top, you may bump into the fan here. Mine is like just underneath there, but it's pretty close in my motherboard. Alright, so I think we're about ready to fire this guy up, and hopefully it boots. And hopefully the temperatures are much cooler. So I'm gonna let it run for a while. Once I boot it up, I'm assuming it boots, I'm gonna run maybe some little bit of a stress test and see what happens, because I know on the old cooler it will heat up quite a bit within a few minutes. Now, since the cooler stopped working as well as it should. So let's go give that a shot. Alright, we got the system back up. Everything is running. It didn't blow up. And yeah, it's doing a really good job compared to what I was seeing before. Right now I'm idling at about 34 degrees Celsius, so less than 100 degrees. Before, a few minutes after the system booted up and got all the apps and everything was running, I'll be hitting near like 70 degrees Celsius pretty quick. So there's definitely was something going on with that heatsink and thermal paste solution that had been in the system for, I don't know, 6-7 years or however long I've had this box. But it started, like I said, exhibiting some type of problem with that. But yeah, so this is working very well. Very cool temps. I'm pretty happy. So only thing as far as instructions of this particular heatsink, I think there are a few errors in the print, or I'm just not fully understanding. But that one piece, like I said, I had to take that off because the instructions looked like it told me to put it on, but once I got to time to actually mount the heatsink, it was impossible to mount the heatsink with that piece in place, so I had to take it out. But seems to be working without it. Temperatures are good. I'm happy. Hopefully it's been useful for someone, and I'll see you in the next one. One last thing about this, it's actually very quiet compared to the stock cooler that was in here before. You may hear some like howling in the background. That's actually another system that's actually starting to have a problem. But this system, this here, is actually very quiet right now using this heatsink cooler combination. So very happy with it outside of the few snacks with the instructions. Has a lot of parts. Some of the all-in-one like water cooling units, some of those kind of come together, and it was quite a bit easier to put together, but this wasn't too difficult to get going, and this build has been a success.